Hello there. Thank you for staying with us. This is People, Politics and Power. I am Imonia Marere. Defection has become a common word in Nigeria's political lexicon just because it happens with the least provocation or even without any justification for it. If we look far back in history, from 1951, when members of the NCNC in the Western House of Assembly moved to the Action Group, defection has become a political culture. Even all through our political, democratic, and constitutional development, there have been clauses inserted in the statute books to make defection less attractive. But politicians have always circumvented the legal provisions. Section 68, subsection 1G of the 1999 Constitution provides that a member of the Senate or of the House of Representatives shall vacate his seat in the House of which he is a member if being a member whose election to the House was sponsored by a political party. He becomes a member of another political party before the expiration of the period for which that house was elected. That same provision applies to state houses of assembly, but there are conditions precedent to such defection. In interpreting this provision, the Supreme Court held in previous litigations that in the case of crisis, it must be manifestly clear that the unity of the party from which a member is defecting must be so threatened to the extent that it is difficult to hold it together. Now, available facts show that the defections are on the basis of anything but crisis. Commentators have identified reasons such as personality clash, power tussle, absence of political principles or political ideology, and of course, the political ambition of the individuals involved. The same law applies to the federal and state legislators, and it therefore follows that it must be equitably applied. How equitable is this being followed in the present dispensation of unrestrained defections? The defection of 5 members of the Akwa Ibom State House of Assembly from the PDP to the APC is causing a brouhaha with all kinds of interpretations and commentary, without taking cognizance of the example set by the Senate President, along with some senators and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, with a whole load of members. All of them, including the principal officers, are still occupying their seats and their exalted positions in the 2 federal legislative houses. Shouldn't the legal ratio being applied in Akwa Ibom have been observed in respect of the Senate and the House of Representatives? How do we achieve a uniform application of such laws to prevent a discriminating interpretation and partisan politicization? That is our focus on people, politics, and power. Well, I'll be joined by 3 gentlemen to take a look at this issue very critically. We'll be meeting them very, very soon. But before then, we will be taking our political updates. That's the updates in the last 24 hours. But that will be right after this time out. Stay with us.
5 key steps to protect your permanent voter card, PVC. The permanent voter card stores biometric information of a voter which are electronically programmed and can only be accessed with a card reader. To protect your PVC, follow these steps. 1. Do not place your PVC in your wallet and sit on it, as these can damage the inner antenna and render it unusable. 2. Keep your PVC away from direct sunlight, heat, and wet places to prevent it from being defaced. 3. Keep your PVC in a secure place and bring it out on election day for voting. Remember, no permanent voter card, no voting. So keep your card safe from damage or loss.
All right, thank you for staying with us. Let's give you some political updates now. As is our tradition on this program, we let you have some of the major political developments of the last 24 hours. Now, in a bid to reappraise their role in the successful conduct of the 2015 general elections, the National Peace Committee, made up of eminent Nigerians, religious and traditional rulers, leaders, on Wednesday met with the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, on security issues ahead of the 2019 general elections. The chairman of the committee and former military head of state, Abubakar, called on political parties and the media to assist the Independent National Electoral Commission in the conduct of free, fair, and credible elections. The committee said it will meet with political parties to advocate for a peace pact. Let's take a listen.
The meeting with the political parties is try to reach an understanding where we'll get them at a later date to sign the memorandum of understanding of how to go on campaigning without bitterness, and for all the parties to accept the end result when finally INEC declares the election result. So this is why we're having this meeting, to strategize and see how we can move forward. We have taken note. There are certain flash areas in the states where he wants the peace committee to intervene in order to bring peace so that election would be conducted. On our part, we'll do the best we can in order to help sanitize the political arena.
Former military head of state, Abubakar, who is, of course, leading the peace process. He did so in 2015, and, of course, he is on it again for the 2019 elections. President Muhammadu Buhari has asked Nigerian troops on the front lines not to lose hope over the recent losses experienced in the counter-insurgency operations in the Northeast. President Buhari said immediate measures are being taken to cover loopholes that led to the tragedy in the Metele and other locations in Borno State.
I assure you that this administration under my leadership is very conscious of the condition you are in, and all I can do is to encourage you to play your constitutional role of defending the integrity of this country.
Of course, President Muhammadu Buhari was right there in Maiduguri visiting the troops on Wednesday and reassuring them of Nigeria's commitment, Nigeria and the Nigerian people's commitment to the selfless service that they are rendering on the war front with the insurgents in that part of the country. Well, our hearts, as the hearts of the Nigerian people, are with the Nigerian troops right there in the Northeast. Well, those are the updates. Let's take another short break, and when we return, we'll be meeting our resource persons and we'll be going straight on to deal with our topic for today, which has to do with defections, the law, and, of course, the stability or instability, will you call it, in the legislative houses in Nigeria. Stay with us.
5 key steps to protect your permanent voter card, PVC. The permanent voter card stores biometric information of a voter which are electronically programmed and can only be accessed with a card reader. To protect your PVC, follow these steps. 1. Do not place your PVC in your wallet and sit on it, as these can damage the inner antenna and render it unusable. 2. Keep your PVC away from direct sunlight, heat, and wet places to prevent it from being defaced. 3. Keep your PVC in a secure place and bring it out on election day for voting. Remember, no permanent voter card, no voting. So keep your card safe from damage or loss.
Thank you for staying with us. Let's get to meet our resource persons. Three gentlemen who are in the house this afternoon. Professor Yusuf Zwaka. He is a lecturer in political science at the University of Abuja, here in the nation's capital, to my far left. Professor Zwaka, thank you so much for finding the time to join us.
Thank you.
We're also joined by a member of Nigeria's House of Representatives, representing Ilorin East and South Federal Constituency, Honorable Abubakar Amuda-Kannike. Thank you so much.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thanks for inviting me.
And, of course, also joining us is a former Attorney General of Nasarawa State in north-central Nigeria, Mr. Innocent Lagi. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. Yes. First, let's take a look at the developments in some state houses of assembly in recent times. And it is not, of course, too different from what we have had in the past. There have been some measure of instability in some state houses, some legislative houses across the country. But these recent ones have to do with the fact that some members have defected, and in some cases their seats have been declared vacant by the presiding officers. And of course, in one case, they headed to the courts, and the courts seemed to support what had been done by the presiding officers, and then they decided to resort to self-help. Mr. Lagi, let me begin with you.
Yeah, it's important to lay the foundation that any member of the legislative house is representative of his constituency. Now, he gets into the legislative assembly as a result of being elected, not appointed by either the members. Now, that is the first one. The second one is the equality of members. Presiding officers have the same status. They came into the house the same way. They are simply elected to preside over the house. So they do not rank higher than their other colleague members. So it is simply for the purposes of the conduct of the proceedings of the house that the speaker becomes different from other members of the house, and as the case were. Now, there is the power granted to the presiding officer of the house when somebody defects to another political party for him to declare the seat of that particular person vacant. Now, that is going to be a constitutional process. So the declaration is in line with what the Constitution says. But there are exceptions that give you a right to move from one political party or another. Now, the important about the proviso to that particular rule is the right of association, that the freedom of association is a guaranteed right. So you cannot be compelled to remain in an association, and you can also choose an association of your choosing. That is a guaranteed right under the Nigerian Constitution. So it is balancing between the fact that the member or the legislative member is not there representing himself, but his constituency and his community, his right of association, and the law that says if you move from one political party to another, if that political party does not have a crisis, the speaker can declare your seat vacant. Now, we need to take this forward. It is INEC that conduct elections, by-elections, for example, into vacancies that may occur in a legislative house. Now, if you also look at the Constitution, the change of political party is not stated as one of the grounds upon which a person loses his membership of the House to start with. So it is important for the Speaker to declare, but there has to be an INEC activity that confirms that that declaration is there, because the power to do that is of INEC. because INEC returns you to come to the House, and the declaration of your seat vacant has to be by a court. So if a speaker declares that seat vacant, the process, whether or not the speaker, as it were, can legally do that without giving a fair hearing as to the establishment or otherwise of the fact that there is a crisis in that political party or not, becomes an issue of the speaker or a legislative, a legislative presiding officer, being both the law, being the judiciary, and being the executor of the same law. So I will always strongly argue that even if that seat can be declared vacant, the member will still be going on until such a pronouncement is made by a court. For basically that is it. So, and that is why when even punishment, we saw in the National Assembly where a member was suspended indefinitely, and the court says you cannot do that because he does not represent you. To do that simply means you are taking away the representation of a community from a constituency. So it is not a matter that should be taken lightly. But of course, in our climb, both the legislators, the presiding officers, and even the country itself try to ascribe political position to the person of the office and not look at it as a trust that the person of the office holds in respect of his community. So it's really not a prize at the end of the day. It's actually the beginning of the job. So a lot of people look at it as if it is the member that loses a prize. But if you take it a little further, it is the community that loses representation in the governance of its own country or of its own state, as the case were.
Honorable Kannike, yes. What are your thoughts on this? Before we go further into the legal and political implications of what this is.
Yeah, thank you very much. Like you rightly said, there are different reasons that are adduced to situations and circumstances where politicians, probably we're talking about those that are elected into the legislature now, of course, to move from one party to another. Politics is dynamic. Yes, it is true you are elected by your people. It is not your mandate. It is the mandate of the people. You owe the mandate in trust for the people. But circumstances, which is recognized by the Constitution. You mentioned the Part 2 of the Constitution. You mentioned Section 68 and Section 109 for the National Assembly and the State Assembly, respectively. This Constitution stipulates that it actually elucidates the conditions where a member loses the mandate that is being conferred on the people of being a member of the parliament. And those conditions are several. But there was an exception, and one of the conditions, particularly the one in reference, that is similar to what we are discussing, or that sort of underscores what we are discussing, is the fact that if you move from a party that elected you on the platform of which you were elected to the parliament, you, particularly when there is no established rancor or division within the party, or where there is no circumstance of the party merging with one or two other parties, then you lose your seat. Now, literally, you can say if you defect, you lose your seat. But there's a caveat to it. And the caveat is that you are protected if you have a reason that there is a dichotomy or there's a threat to the unity of the party, that under which platform you are elected. Then you have a reason to defect and you can get away with it. I think the real issue is there are discordant opinions on when there is really a discord or a division in the party. Yes, my colleague here in the discussion mentioned earlier that the interpretation that is a bunch of equals when you come to the legislature, and for the essence of conduct of the affairs and activities of the parliament, you have the principal officers. And once you confer that authority on the principal officer, you are conferring a lot of responsibility that comes with that position. And in his own opinion, his interpretation, really matters in this circumstance. For instance, he can look based on the fact that, okay, this is the obtaining situation. We are aware that there is a disunity or there's a problem within a political association. So if somebody defects, the person does not automatically lose a seat. Maybe it's in the public opinion that there is actually crisis within the party on which he was elected.
Can internal party wranglings be interpreted to mean division within a party? Because there are hardly any of the political parties in Nigeria today.
When you have internal party wranglings that lead to a situation where some people are trying to secede or break away from the party or question the authority of the leadership of the party, you understand? And you now have factions within that same party. That is enough indicator to say the fact that there is a crisis. But when you have the normal political bickerings and the